Impressio, de que unir y bae, aro ni du henyo, Hotel Saiba, Toyo Banuba, Lubata Hirugunale, Lani Basigiti, Hotel Saiba, Toyo Banuba.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the 9th International Garifuna Conference hosted by the Garifuna Heritage Foundation in St. Vincent and the Grenadines in collaboration with the University of the West Indies Open Campus, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We are so happy that you can join us for this segment of the program. My name is Marlon Joseph, and I am your host for this segment. Remember, this is just a pre-show. It's a warm-up to the main event coming up. We have the official opening ceremony for the 9th International Garifuna Conference. This is just a warm-up. So what would be happening in this segment? Well, we will be giving a number of people the opportunity to bring greetings on behalf of their respective communities and groups from across the globe. So remember to stay tuned for the continuity of the program. After this, we have the official opening of the 9th International Garifuna Conference. I must say thank you to our sponsors, National Properties, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, also Bank of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and their Mutual Life. We appreciate you for collaborating with us to bring this important event. Of course, this is the second consecutive year that we are hosting this event virtually because of challenges rendered by the COVID-19 pandemic. But we were committed to continue to present this program because we recognize its importance as a landmark event at this time of year. So thank you once more for joining us. So remember, this is the shout-out segment, but before we get to the shout-outs, we will be having a musical interlude. So let us enjoy this music video by Adrian Martinez. So let us enjoy this music video.
Bye.
So there we had it. We had that wonderful music video by Agent Martinez. Okay, so now we are going right into our shout outs, and the first person I will be calling on, her name is Dr. Melanie Newton. She has been a long-standing associate of the Garifuna Heritage Foundation here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. She has participated in a number of conferences in the past, given unforgettable presentations, and she lectures at the University of Toronto. Dr. Melanie Newton, you're live on the program. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
So first of all, I want to say hello from the traditional territory of many First Nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and what is now called the City of Toronto, which is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. I also acknowledge that Toronto, which is where I live, is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaties, signed with multiple Mississauga and Chippewa nations. I also acknowledge that as a treaty person here in Toronto, all of us, those who came as settlers, as well as migrants, either in this generation or in generations past, and those of us who came here involuntarily, particularly those brought to these lands as a result of the transatlantic slave trade and slavery, we all pay tribute to those ancestors of African origin and descent. So I wanted to just start with those words and say that I am honored that my friends at the Garifuna Heritage Foundation, first of all, I'm so impressed and amazed and eternally grateful for this conference, and I am so honored that I was asked to speak these words of welcome this evening. And I wanted to just say thank you for the way that they have welcomed me. I'm from Barbados originally. I live and work in Toronto now. But I am a Bajan who is not Garifuna, but it has been my pleasure over these years to be part of the wonderful community that surrounds this conference. And the two acknowledgements that I read, these are the tradition here now in Canada is to acknowledge the Indigenous people on whose land one lives. And I think that's the perfect way to open this conference. But I also read an African ancestral acknowledgement. And I think for me, I offer these to all of us and to the Garifuna as people who embrace both their African and Indigenous heritage and who have always refused to be forced to be only one thing or the other. That they embrace all of the complexity and beauty of their history, their story of survival. And I think the story of the Garifuna is precisely the legacy of resilience that the world needs right now. I have always thought that not just the Caribbean, but the entire world has much to learn from the Garifuna story. For me personally, as a Caribbean scholar who lives in North America, this conference has been transformative. It has changed the way I think about the Caribbean. It's changed the way I think about myself as a Caribbean person. I've also seen how much it has transformed how many Garifuna people think about themselves, as well as the conversation in the Caribbean about Indigenous people, but also about what reparations for slavery and Indigenous genocide really ought to mean and who should be part of that conversation. And in a time when Barbados, which is my home country, has chosen, finally, after 400 years, to cut ties with the British monarchy, it seems to me that this is the moment when restitution for the Garifuna people and the protection of Balasso Island and the full respect that the history and culture and language and traditions of the Garifuna people deserve, to me, those full acknowledgements in the Caribbean by our governments and by all non-Garifuna people are a necessary next step in our decolonization as a region. So again, I say thank you so much for including me in this evening, and I wish everyone well as we come through this pandemic. And again, I think this conference and the Garifuna people point the way forward for our resilience and our collective survival. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Newton. it would have been remiss of us not to have invited you to participate, because we know that you have made numerous contributions to this conference over the years, which we really do appreciate. So we really had to have you on the program, and we are happy that you were able to join us and bring us your remarks. Thank you so much, Dr. Milton. So we continue with the shout out. Remember, later this evening we will be having the official opening ceremony for the 9th International Garifuna Conference under the theme Building Resilience, Creating Cultural Capital for Sustainability of the Garifuna Heritage. A shout out to our sponsors, National Property, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the Marara Mutual, and Bank of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So our next person to bring shout outs, we're going now to Jamaica. So I'm going to call on Chief Kasik Halan Niborix Kaiman, also known as Robert Hellman, and he is chief of an indigenous Jamaican group, the Taino. So Chief Halan Niborix Kaiman, you are live on the program. Welcome.
Usanonu Kayukunu, Niborix Kaiman Kasika Yukayaki Waninga. Greetings, my relatives. I am Chief Kalan Niborix Kaiman of the Jamaican Hummingbird Taino people. It is my honor to be here to connect with our Garifuna relatives. I'll take a short opportunity to bring special greetings to our Master of Ceremony here, Marlon Josephs, President Mr. David Williams, Keynote Speaker Mr. Darius Avila, the Garifuna Heritage Foundation, all of their members and community individuals that have been stalwarts in preserving and sharing the heritage of the Garifuna people, so that they are a very loud voice in this resurgence movement of indigenous people, in this time of sustainable development goals, in this time of net zero 2050, in this time of wonder and worry about the sustainability of this planet in which we live. I give thanks to UA Open Campus St. Vincent and the Grenadines for hosting this and allowing others outside of the academic realm to delve into this intangible cultural history of humanity. I greet also all of our other indigenous relatives, Caribbean relatives, and relatives throughout the globe at this moment. For this is a time of shifts. This is a time of importance to speak about the topic that we will hear over the next few days, about sustainability of the Garifuna heritage. And some might wonder, what is the importance of the sustainability of the Garifuna heritage to the world at large? Of the Caribbean indigenous speaker, the Garifuna people are the people who have held on to their language. The Garifuna people are the people that hold within their language the keys to interpreting and understanding island Arawakan languages. They have supported us, the Taino people, the Yame Taino people, some without even knowing. Their teachers like Milton Gaiti and others, their work has allowed us to dissect and understand more about our culture. So that is the importance of custodians. And we should do all that we can to support their efforts and their work. From them, we will have a better understanding of how the ancestors of these regions and my ancestors were able to maintain these spaces. And looking at the goals that are there for 2030, 8 years from now, these projects, these duties are ours now to focus on and to work on, to ensure that the next 7 generations have these spaces and opportunities to learn, to share, and to grow. So in Garinagu, I say Seremain. In Wahiani Island, Arawakan, I say Hahom. Hahoma, great thanks for the work that you're doing. And may you continue to be supported. May the Hari, and Great Spirit in many ways, shapes, and forms, continue to bless those who have taken this mantle and this work. I know there's a lot of controversy. I know at times it seems as if the rewards are far from reach. But know that you're supported. And when you fall upon hard times, know that prayers of many around the globe will lift and assist you on moving forward. So with that I say, and Hankatu, and so it is, and pass on the mantle to our other relatives here present.
Thank you so much, Chief Palan Nimorix Taima from the Jamaica Taino tribe. And of course, this conference has always celebrated indigeneity, not only relative to the Garifuna people, but to indigenous peoples across the world. So thank you so much for your presentation. So we move from, so we're traveling the region, right? So we started in Canada, and now we are going to Belize, from Jamaica to Belize. So I will now call on Mr. Andrew Castillo, who represents the National Garifuna Council of Belize. So Mr. Andrew Castillo, welcome to the program. You are live, sir.
Thank you so much. Buiti Ramawayu, Buiti Goyong, bonsoir, Usunono, good evening, buenas tardes. I bring you greetings from the Garifuna people in Belize and the lovely village of Apia. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share a few words at the 9th Annual International Garifuna Conference. We have felt the effects of this COVID-19 pandemic in various ways. However, we must look at these new occurrences as opportunities that we can use to our benefit. And it has been beneficial to us as it has exposed the inadequacy of connectivity in Belize, in our communities, forcing a review by the relevant authorities. We are also using this opportunity to improve the basic technical skills of our people and getting them more familiar with this new technology and be more comfortable in the 21st century. The theme for this year for the conference is building resilience, creating cultural capital for sustainability of the Garifuna heritage, which is what we need, given the challenges that we're facing, not only locally, but also regionally and globally. The focus will be on using the knowledge of our indigenous language, history, craft for economic, social, and cultural development. This is appropriate as this year is the beginning of the Decade of Indigenous Languages as declared by UNESCO, 2022-2032. This is to draw attention to the threats and the challenges faced by our indigenous languages in all parts of the globe. Many of our languages are facing critical challenges, and if not mitigated soon, the result will be extinction. Regularly, we hear of languages where the number of people who speak it are reducing dramatically. Globally, there are around 600 languages with less than 100 people who speak them. Let us be clear. Our languages are under threat directly because of colonialism and the vestigial practices where natives were and are still marginalized as if they are of no consequence. The process of forced assimilation of European culture, religion, and practices, destruction of our artifacts, the murder of our people, removal from our lands, adaptation of discriminatory laws and criminalization of cultural practices have all contributed to the erosion and loss of our culture and language. As a Garifuna people, we have direct experience with this, even in the 21st century. You all are familiar with our banishment from our homeland, St. Vincent, and settling in lands that were foreign to us. You all are familiar with our being banned from practicing our culture and speaking our languages. You all are familiar with the criminalization of our attempts of preserving our culture and the retention of the lands that we settle in. Have a great conference, peel your eyes, open your ears, as there's so much that we can learn over the next few days. Thank you all and stay safe. Loli Renigero.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Andrew Castillo, from the National Garifuna Council of Belize. And you mentioned the Garifuna language, of course, that was the focal point for last year's conference. It's a good time for us to remind our viewers that the Garifuna language was, of course, recognized by UNESCO as a tangible cultural heritage of humanity. And that is something that we are all proud of and always remember. Also, let me remind you that this conference is being presented by the Garifuna Heritage Foundation in collaboration with the University of the West Indies Open Campus. So we go from Belize to Suriname. Yeah, Suriname. So I will now call on Ms. Celine France, and Celine is the Director of Bureau BITS. So Celine France, welcome to the program. You are live.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I am very pleased to be here today and to extend greetings at the opening ceremony of the 9th International Garifuna Conference on behalf of the Association of Indigenous Village Leaders in Suriname, FITS. So it has been a very difficult year with many losses due to the COVID pandemic. But the Great Spirit, that's what I believe, has kept us for something greater than any of us. So we are very honored to take part in this conference, for it testifies to the hope that we people share in the Caribbean region. So we want to congratulate the Garifuna people, and especially the Garifuna Heritage Foundation, with organizing this conference. Thank you again, and all the success for the coming days. Thank you.
Thank you to Ms. Celine France, Director of Bureau BITS from Suriname. So we'll be taking a break, and let us enjoy this song of music. It is one of my favorite songs by Andy Palacio, and this one is called Martin. Please enjoy. Yes. in Alaska with his song Watina. For those of you who are just joining us, let me remind you that this segment of the program is the Shout Out segment. Coming up a bit later, we'll be having the official opening ceremony for the conference. This is just a Shout Out segment. My name is Marlon Joseph, your host. Next person to bring greetings to us is from Guatemala, and she will be presenting in Spanish, and Zoila Ellis Brown will do the translation in English. So this speaker represents the Garifuna community in Guatemala, and her name is Ingrid Gamboa. Ingrid, bienvenido. ¿Cómo estás en vivo?
Muchas gracias. Viti Guño, Viti Ramboello, Viti Rebo, en Jagambua.
Thank you. Good morning, good evening. Thank you for being here. I'm glad to be here.
Gracias por la invitación de la Fundación Garifuna Heritage.
Thanks for the invitation sent by the Garifuna Heritage Foundation.
Me siento honrada de ser parte de este importante panel esta tarde.
I feel honored to be part of this important panel.
La comunidad garífuna de la diáspora guatemalteca
The Garifuna community, the Garifuna community in the Guatemalan diaspora,
celebramos junto a ustedes, hermanos Garinago de Yurume,
celebrate together with you, brothers and sisters, in St. Vincent, Burundi.
Estos 9 años de visibilidad, de resistencia, resiliencia.
These 9 years of visibility, resistance,
resiliencia
and resilience, yes.
Y rescate de la identidad e historia ancestral de la nación garífuna.
And recovery of the identity and the history and the story of the Garifuna people.
Celebro nuestras vidas.
We celebrate our lives,
ya que la tragedia que COVID-19 ha provocado en el mundo,
despite the fact of what COVID-19 has done in the world, we celebrate life.
Y desnudado las enormes brechas de desigualdades que viven los pueblos.
And we can ignore, we can understand the great inequalities that exist amongst people.
El pueblo garífuna de Guatemala sufrimos severamente y seguimos sufriendo el impacto de COVID y todas sus secuelas.
The Garifuna community in Guatemala continues to be impacted by the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Sin embargo, hemos sobrevivido a ello usando las estrategias.
Notwithstanding, we have managed to survive using the strategies
aprendido de nuestros antepasados,
learned from our ancestors,
aquellos que fueron expulsados hace 225 años de nuestra madre tierra, Yurume.
Yes, those strategies, those ancestors who were expelled over 200 years ago from Yurume, from St. Vincent,
que aún permanece en nuestra más profunda memoria histórica,
who still live today in our deepest memory and our deepest experiences.
Cuando cantamos nuestro himno nacional Garifuna, Yurume,
when we sing our national anthem, our Garifuna national anthem called Yurume,
en todas nuestras luchas y demandas,
in all our struggles and our demands,
para el respeto de nuestros derechos humanos,
for the respect of our human rights
y derechos territoriales donde nos encontramos.
and the right to our land where we are now settled.
Considero importante este tipo de eventos
I think this type of event is very important
para continuar visibilizando la historia, las luchas de nuestra gran nación garífuna.
to continue to show, promote the struggles of our great Garifuna nation.
Donde quiera que nos encontramos, Guatemala es uno de los países muy racista, discriminador. Tenemos que luchar día a día por sobrevivir.
No matter where we are in Guatemala, we understand, we experience racism in Guatemala, and we have to struggle very hard to survive.
Todos los días, dices, este evento fortalece nuestras luchas históricas y no me resta más que darle gracias. Sereme, lo hago, dale. Muchas gracias.
And therefore, this type of event gives us strength and courage to continue fighting. And so I wish to say thank you very much for including us. And we wish to say greetings and goodbye. Thank you.
Sereme, prima.
Thank you. Cousin, that's my cousin.
Muchas gracias, Ingrid, por tu participación en tu mensaje y tenerte fuerte. So now we go on to our next person to bring greetings, and we are right back home in Uruguay with this speaker. She hails from the indigenous community of the Garifuna community in St. Vincent. So it's Gail Matisse from Ovia. So Gail Matisse from Ovia. Okay, so I'll go on to the next. Okay, so the next person I'm going to call up. Now, she was very much involved in the production of last year's conference. She was with us here at the Center of Command, and she did a fantastic job. And I'm so happy that she can still participate, although she is not here with us physically. Dr. Kimberly Palmer from Canada.
Hi, everybody, friends, family. I'm so happy to be here virtually. Good thing about the virtual conference, I had to leave St. Vincent, unfortunately. I'm here in Toronto, but very happy to participate. Although I miss kind of being in the same room with the crew, Marilyn, what's up? So this is the 9th International Garifuna Conference, and the theme, as we know, is building resilience. And having spent the past year and a half thereabouts back in St. Vincent, back home in St. Vincent, being there for the eruption of the La Soufrière volcano, I just wanted to sort of indicate towards the various sorts of situations that demand resilience, that demand analysis and some sense of planning. I know often when we talk about land issues, for example, in St. Vincent, when it comes to our Afro-Indigenous population, we often focus on Balaso, which definitely needs to be focused on. I'm not suggesting we shift any focus from that, but rather expand the focus to also include, red zone communities and the various plights that they've been subject to over the past year. The situation's far from over. I think Marlon spoke very beautifully to that actually in a little meeting that we had prior to this, that a lot of us who aren't from the red zone might not know exactly what sort of struggles are still occurring there, but we do need to tune in. I also just wanted to, just really congratulate TGHF for all of the work that they've been doing and to really offer, my support in any way that I can and my deep gratitude. I first met Soila and I think Darky back, when would that be? Back in 2000, I want to say 2003, 2004. when I was writing up my master's thesis and becoming more and more interested in Garifuna history in St. Vincent as well as in Central America. THHF was vital to me beginning my doctoral studies, vital to assisting me with connections and information, and basically allowed me to do the research and disseminate that research. So I hope I can give something back through the work that I've done. So thank you so much for all that you've offered to St. Vincent, to the diaspora, to the wider community, of academics, researchers, people in struggle, activists. And I'm wishing you much success going forward. And I'm really, happy to be tuning in. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kimberly. And we're happy that you were able to join us on virtually this year. We miss you here at the Central Command as well. And Kimberly, I'm happy that Kimberly highlighted the red zone communities that were disproportionately affected by the eruption of the Nasofo volcano. When she mentioned the red zone, let me explain now. The red zone communities are the communities closest to the Nasofo volcano. So those, and incidentally, these communities also constitute the indigenous communities. And as Kimberly mentioned, the evacuees from those communities were still in shelters today, so we must continue to remember them in our prayers and them in our thoughts. So thank you, Kimberly, for bringing attention to that. Okay, so we move now to another musical interlude, and again, it's Andy Palacio, the artist, and this one is called Amunigu. 9th International Garifuna Conference coming up in a few minutes. We'll be having the official opening ceremony of the conference. So, the next person to do a shout out, I am really happy to introduce him because he is one of the people whom I can credit for my appreciation of history taught me at St. Vincent Grammar School. These days, he is a lecturer at the University of the West Indies, Hayville campus. Also, he's one of 4 historians who are involved in a national history project commissioned by the government of St. Vincent and Grenadines. Now, this is where these 4 historians, they are responsible for producing 2 texts about the comprehensive history of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I'm really happy to call on my former history teacher, Dr. Cleve Scott, to bring some greetings to the conference. Dr. Scott, you are live.
Thank you very much, Marlon, for the kind words and the warm welcome. Special greetings to Zola Ellis Brown, to David Archie Williams, Comrade Mike Brown, and all the others who are laboring hard and have been laboring hard in the Garifuna Heritage Foundation. I particularly enjoy the 2 renditions from Andy Palacio, Marlon, but I see that you prefer the slow stuff. I prefer the faster stuff, Punta Rock. I had the opportunity to engineer for Andy Palacio when he performed in St. Vincent way back around 1990. And I was intrigued at the kind of drums that he used in his music. But his music is indeed a symbol of Garifuna heritage globally. And as we're speaking about music, my mind runs back to the early 1980s when I was starting out first as a young DJ. And Comrade Mike Brown, he was in London, and he brought me back a record. The record was called Solidarity by the Black Euro, a reggae group. And at the time, I probably was the only person in St. Vincent with a copy of the record for several months. But the lyrics of this song is indeed applicable to this moment. The lyrics says everybody wants the same thing, don't they? Everybody wants a happy end. They want to see the game on Saturday. They want to be somebody's friend. Everybody wants to work for a living. They want to keep their children warm. Everybody wants to be forgiven. They want a shelter from the storm. Look at me. I ain't your enemy. We walk on common ground. We don't need to fight each other. What we need is solidarity. And so I thank all of the other speakers earlier on who brought messages of solidarity from across the region. Because fortunately, I've had the opportunity to visit many of these countries in Central America where our Garifuna brothers and sisters reside. And indeed, they have fought a long and hard battle to keep our indigenous culture from our homeland alive. And in this regard, I must continue to congratulate the Garifuna Heritage Foundation. 9 years of this conference is not easy. And as we go into the 10th year, I want to urge them for us to make the 10th anniversary special. And so I am committed to assisting with getting several of these papers published in the next year. Now, you mentioned, Marlon, in your introductory remarks of the national history. And I want to assure all that in this national history, which is being written by myself, Dr. Adrian Fraser, Dr. Michael Gary Denny, and Dr. Arnold Thomas, that the earliest chapters, first of all, look at St. Vincent and the Grenadines before the arrival of the indigenous people, and then the arrival of the indigenous people, the emergence of a Garifuna community and a Garifuna culture, and the impact of this forced migration, or what I call this banishment, or what is referred to in text by many others as exile. And so, as we go into the 10th anniversary, I want to continue to urge the Garifuna Heritage Foundation to find other ways to celebrate Garifuna culture. We can think about sites of memory, marking some of the areas where Garifuna communities existed and meaningful events took place. And also we could mark trails. Why don't we mark one of the most important trails of one of the most important battles, and so on. So I wanted to thank the Garifuna Heritage Foundation for continuing to keep this fight going. And it is this kind of fight that has given impetus for this national history. And we thank you very much for your support.
And thank you so much, Dr. Scott, for your remarks. And I love the way you just really hyped up the 10th conference. And I find it intriguing to think of you moonlighting as a disc jockey. I wonder what was your name back then as a DJ. But thank you so much for joining us and for those remarks. You really have us excited about the prospect of celebrating the 10th International Garifuna Conference. A good time to remind you guys of our sponsors. We have on board with us the University of the West Indies Open Campus, SVG, also the Live, National Properties, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and also Bank of SVG. I want to thank our sponsors for collaborating with us. Remember, this is just a pre-show, the warm-up coming up in a few minutes. We will be having the official opening ceremony for the conference. So don't go anywhere. So the final person to do a shout out on this segment. Now, this is someone with an incomparable passion for local culture, history, and tradition, and she has worked tirelessly over the years closely with the Garifuna Heritage Foundation, especially in the production of the Garifuna National School Festival, something that has been impeded over the past 2 years because of the COVID-19 pandemic. But this is someone who always brings a lot of enthusiasm and infectious energy to any project that she lends for support to. She is also the cultural officer in the Ministry of Culture, Tourism and Culture. Of course, I speak of no other than my dear friend, Miss Maxine Brown. Maxine, you are live on the program. Welcome.
Good evening all. I want to welcome everyone to the 9th International Garifuna Conference. It is indeed good to be here, and as the cultural officer at the Department of Culture in the Ministry of Tourism, Civil Aviation, Sustainable Development and Culture, I bring you greetings. I want to take this opportunity to congratulate the Garifuna Heritage Foundation for a job well done. As Manuel stated, we have collaborated over the years and it was really great working with you. And because I'll speak later, I won't say much now, but just welcome all and let's celebrate our heritage. Welcome. Thank you, Marlon.
Okay, and thank you, Maxine. I look forward to your presentation later on. So, there we had shout outs from all across the region, from North America to Jamaica to Belize, Suriname, Barbados, Jamaica, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So, but before we close this session, we will be playing this music video by Georgette Langley Yermi. Let us enjoy this music video.
Fire, fire, fire,
Perfect song to use for a conclusion as well. A perfect song to use to transition to the next segment of this program, which is song of ours. Gets you pumped up and excited. And I hope that you are pumped and that you are excited for the next segment, because this is the main event coming up next. It's the official opening ceremony for the 9th International Garifuna Conference, hosted by the St. Vincent Garifuna Heritage Foundation, as well in collaboration with the University of the West Indies Open Campus SVG, and with sponsors Bank of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, National Properties SVG, and the Camarara Hotel. My name is Marlon Joseph. It was a pleasure hosting you for this shout-out segment. I want to thank everyone who joined us and presented. Those of you who just joined in preparation for what's coming next. At this point, I will hand over to the controller proceedings to my colleague, Ronnie Daniel. Ronnie, over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Brother Marlon, and good evening to you, my sisters and brothers. Let me continue. Well, first of all, let me say thank you to Brother Marlon for being such a gracious host and a very effective host as well. And I thoroughly enjoyed this segment. We are now switching over to a little bit more things formal, and so before we go into the events, may I invite our dear sister to, as always, open us with prayer in Garifuna. It's my pleasure to welcome Sister Rosita Alvarez, who is joining us from New York. Sister Rosita.
Good night to everyone. I'm Rosita Alvarez, and we start with a prayer. Lida and Liri, Ushli, Loma, Iraho, Loma Africa, Gunflit, Itarala. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Heavenly Father, as we gather in this conference, we pray for and deliver to you the leaders, participants, and those listening to this conference. We ask you, dear Father, for wisdom, patience towards each other, for your guidance and support as we engage in meaningful discussion, which will be helpful to all Garifuna throughout the world. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Wagushi bungi unida sufula jubila baruwa yawo adigwala leba buseru lida muwa lida sufula wagushi Bungi, Lida Sufla, Yumbila, Baruay Hao, Adugala, Leba Buseru, Lida Mua, Lida Sufla, Lida Mua, Lida Sufla. Wagushila Serbe in the Bola Bill. Chulila Baruya. I do la let Babuse room Ubo, case in the Digno save. Ruba Wake and Feng Wong Ubuye, Tolan in a Sagway. Ferudo Bay Wachara, Cape Ferudo Wamania a Chara by one. Madumba have power little lemmer figure, Safabo, little get soon, Wuribani. Wagushi Bungi, Lida Sufla, Yumbila, Waruay Hao, Adugala, Leba Buseru, Lida Mua, Lida Sufla, Lida Mua, Lida Sufla, Itarala. Amen.
Thank you very much, Sister Rosita.
Welcome.
Thank you. It's now my pleasure to invite you to listen to in Garifuna, the national anthem of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Ureme, presented by Sister Omega Sintele and Brother Shane Wynn. Thank you very much, Shane, and my dear sister Omega, for that beautiful rendition of the national anthem of Ureme. We move on now to the, before we do the official welcome, I first of all want to acknowledge the presence of His Excellency, the Ambassador of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, His Excellency Francisco Perez, and his wife, Mrs. Andrina Bermudez, sorry. I also want to welcome President of the Garifuna Heritage Foundation, Brother David Darky Williams, whom you shall hear from shortly. We also want to welcome and acknowledge the presence of the head of the University of the West Indies Open Campus, Mrs. Dalrymple, who is indisposed at this moment, but she's here on this meeting with us. Miss Maxine Brown, who is Cultural Officer in the Ministry of Culture, Tourism, Civil Aviation, and Sustainable Development and Culture. I want to welcome the members of the Garifuna Heritage Foundation and the organizing committee. I recognize also our very special guests this evening, Brother Darius Avila, whom we shall hear from a little later. Welcome, my brother. I take this opportunity to welcome colleagues from the University of the West Indies, members of the wider Garifuna family in this hemisphere, South America, Central America, and North America, and of course, these islands. And I welcome all of you who have joined us, and I want to make a special plea for you to invite at least 2 persons tomorrow into Sunday, so that we can have a grand time as we reflect on the business of this heritage, of the heart and soul of a people. So it's my pleasure now to welcome all of you, and we welcome our president, Brother David, to bring us the official welcome remarks. Brother David.
Thank you very much, Ronnie. Good evening to all viewers, listeners, participants in this event. I want to extend Ronnie's welcome to all of you. I do so formally a little later down, but just a little bit of background. For many years, the Garifuna Heritage Foundation have been carrying the torch of educating the general Vincentian public in all aspects of the Garifuna history, heritage, culture. As a matter of fact, one may say that we have been at the forefront and must take much of the credit for the level of acceptance of this culture as an important ingredient in strengthening the Vincentian psyche. This heritage, this culture, this history stands as a monument of resolve to the memory of the people who created it 300 years ago, or just over 300 years ago. And as I speak, some, if not all of you, are aware that St. Vincent and the Grenadines have not retained any of this heritage and culture following the banishment of the Black Caribs from the island in 1797, and the genocide on Baliso that came in the immediate aftermath of that expulsion. This year begins the decade of indigenous languages, and the indigenous language of Urume, St. Vincent, is not even spoken in the land where it was born, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Not even the most simple vestiges of this language as part of an indigenous culture. I wish to say, though, that some aspects of retrieval will continue to be featured by us alongside our public awareness and public education roster in order to strengthen those aspects we already have in practice. Of course, the COVID-19 pandemic made its intervention a couple of years ago and effectively curtailed most face-to-face activities across the world, including St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and continue to make them difficult up to today. The eruption of La Soufrière volcano 11 months ago and the displacement and dislocation of so many thousands of persons and families have also compounded the communication situation. And it has become quite difficult to go with certain programs. The red zone around the volcano is inhabited almost entirely by the indigenous populations of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, namely the Garifuna and Kalinago peoples. Presently, the recovery effort is ongoing and will continue to be so for the next few years. A high percentage of families in that red zone have returned to their homes, to their animals, to their farms, with the help, of course, of government assistance programs, including possible relocation. As expected, that process is quite slow and perhaps a bit cumbersome, but everyone expects a satisfactory final outcome. We assist in whatever ways we are asked to, and we are finding some of our own. This conference, therefore, comes at a time when extremely difficult circumstances prevail and is expected to get worse as the Ukraine situation unfolds and roll on. I therefore want to welcome all of you, presenters, observers alike, to this 9th International Garifuna Conference. It is hoped that the advancement of our activities and interaction with our indigenous populations continue to be boosted by your presence and assistance, and by your presentations over the next couple of days, and by all who interact with us. Thank you for being part of this 9th Garifuna Conference, International Garifuna Conference, and hope that all that is discussed and all the interactions that we expect to have will become a fruitful exercise for all of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and particularly the indigenous peoples of this country. Welcome and thank you for being part of this conference.
Thank you very much, Brother David Williams, President of the Garifuna Heritage Foundation here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And of course, Daki is and has been a national treasure. And David, we really thank you for those very comforting words. I also wear 2 hats this evening. Apart from chair, I'm also representing the University of the West Indies Open Campus. And so it's my pleasure to bring you greetings on behalf of our head of site, who is indisposed this evening. She's on the meeting with us, but is unable to bring the presentation. And so I am Ronnie Daniel, and I am the administrative officer in the Deputy Principal's office. And so I will bring you the words of greetings and welcome on behalf of the Open Campus St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and I do so on behalf of Head of Site, Mrs. Deborah Dalrymple. Ladies and gentlemen, special greetings to those brothers and sisters who have joined us from outside of URMA, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. It gives me great pleasure to represent the UWI Open Campus, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, once again as we co-host this International Garifuna Conference. I'm particularly appreciative of the Herculean task and sustained efforts by the Garifuna Heritage Foundation over the years to keep the Garifuna history and culture at the forefront of our consciousness. Through activities such as the international conferences, school festivals, workshops, research, networking, exchange visits, among other things, the Garifuna Heritage Foundation has celebrated our history with pride and kept the spirit of Paramount Chief Joseph Chatelier alive. The University of the West Indies is aware of the history and experience of the indigenous peoples of our region. Indeed, Vice-Chancellor Hilary Beckles serves as chair of the CARICOM Reparations Commission. And in that capacity, he makes the clarion call, or has made the clarion call over and over again for what he calls reparatory justice, which must address the genocide of our indigenous peoples. Further, the 10-point plan of the Reparations Committee calls for eradicating illiteracy in the indigenous populations. And so the university, however, recognizes the importance of tertiary education in developing the resources in our communities and has taken a direct step to address this. In 2005, the university introduced the Sir Arthur Lewis Award for the Sir Arthur Lewis Scholarship, and designed a subcomponent exclusively for students of the indigenous population, wherein students are awarded a full 3-year scholarship to a UWI, the Keyville campus in Barbados. Those populations were the Kalinago of Dominica, the mayors of Belize, and the Garifuna of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Belize. And so sites like Dominica and St. Vincent and the Grenadines have formed mutually beneficial partnerships with indigenous communities. Over the years, this conference has explored our Garifuna culture and ancestry along several dimensions. It has educated us on history, retrieval, research, reparations, and resistance, on pilgrimage and heritage tourism, and on the 1797 exile, and the significance of Baliso, and has broadened our knowledge of Garifuna in the diaspora and in URMA itself. In 2001, UNESCO declared that the Garifuna heritage and culture was a masterpiece of intangible heritage of humanity. And last year, we celebrated a significant milestone, 20 years since that declaration, by the Universal Declaration on Cultural Diversity in 2001. And so UNESCO encouraged the recognition and protection of intangible heritage in the same way as natural and cultural treasures of tangible heritage. Intangibles such as language, literature, dance, games, and know-how of craft and food preparation, the myths and beliefs which make up a cultural and social identity. In spite of the dispersed nature of the Garifuna nation and being but part of a small percentage of the world's population, the value of its contribution was declared a masterpiece. The rights of Garifuna are also represented in and supported by the 2007 United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and form part of that struggle as the struggle of people of African descent. This year, the Garifuna Heritage Foundation, in collaboration with the University of the West Indies Open Campus, the St. Vincent and the Grenadines country site, will be hosting the 9th International Conference under the theme, building resistance, creating cultural capital for sustainability of the Garifuna heritage. We will hear presentations which explore strategies for survival and sustainability, pursuing cultural, social, and economic goals, especially in the context of COVID-19. The discussion on the Garifuna as a living masterpiece will continue in presentations on Garifuna cultural manifestations as living heritage, and of course on Baliso, the ultimate symbol of the resilience and survival of the Garifuna people. At the 6th International Conference, a plan was laid out by Ms. Vera Britta, a tourism professional and our featured speaker that year. And she addressed the balance between entrepreneurship policy and the protection of heritage. We are therefore reminded that even as we share who we are with the world, management practices must embrace the protection of the authenticity of the cultural norms and the intangibles of our heritage. Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you to this conference and thank you for joining us. So we will now move into our next presentation. And it's my pleasure now to invite our cultural officer, Ms. Maxine Brown, to formally bring remarks on behalf of the ministry, after which I'll invite my co-host, Brother Marlon, to introduce our keynote speaker. Sister Maxine.
Good evening all. First and foremost, I offer sincere apologies for the Honorable Carlos James, who was unable to be with us this evening. Do accept his sincere apology. Chatoyer, Chatoyer, came the chorus from the bay. Wave on wave, there's the ocean relay. Chatoyer, Chatoyer, splash the chorus on the coast. Chatoyer, Chatoyer, in a full body boast. My heart, syncopating a beat, a pounded, shatata, shatata, shatatoye, shatata, shatata, shatatoye, shatata, shatata, shat. Excerpt from the book, Saga of Haruna, by Marcia Harold Hines. I bring you greetings on behalf of our Honorable Minister, the Honorable Carlos James, Minister in the Ministry of Tourism, Civil Aviation, Sustainable Development and Culture. This is indeed a proud moment, a proud feeling to be associated with aspects of our culture, a culture that speaks to the language of our ancestors, that speaks life in and of our heritage, the Garinagu. In this vein, the ministry has always pledged its commitment to the Garifuna Heritage Foundation and all its efforts in its promotion, protection, and or preservation of our Garifuna heritage. Moreover, the ministry has always contributed in cash and or in kind to the efforts of the council. In fact, so concerned are we about the works of the foundation, we have had a representative on that committee since its inception in the person of yours truly, Ms. Maxine Brown, our then Dance Development Officer, now Cultural Officer, ably attesting to the fact that we are interested, we are attentive, and more importantly, committed to making a contribution to your work as we reclaim, recapture, revive, and retain our Garifuna ancestry. Over the years, we have undertaken in this joint collaboration pilgrimages to Baliso, developed a national park, the Chatoyer National Park, mind you, created the National Schools Garifuna Folk Festival. We have been afforded opportunity to travel to Belize. whilst also making contributions to other cultural practitioners to travel to Belize, and the list could go on and on. We have always heavily invested in the annual Garifuna homecoming, but we had to curtail that activity since the pandemic. Our cultural calendar continues to highlight and bring awareness about our rich, varied cultural heritage through the Primary School Performing Arts Festival, CRISPAF, Heroes and Heritage Month in March, including the National Schools Garifuna Folk Festival and Emancipation Month in August. And recently, St. Vincent and the Grenadines was elected to serve on the World Heritage Committee from 2021 to 2025. Yes, we continue to do our part as the ministry. We are in the process of developing 2 manuscripts co-authored by 4 of our local historians, Dr. Steve Scott, Adrian Fraser, Arnold Thomas, and Gary Denny, that will provide opportunities for us to teach our local history. So we are indeed doing our part to ensure that our students know and learn all about who we are and where did we come from. In essence, we continue to do our part to obtain and maintain and retain our Garifuna heritage. This year, the theme for the 9th International Garifuna Conference, Building Resilience, Creating Cultural Capital for Sustainability of the Garifuna Heritage, could not have been more fitting. It is important to emphasize that the struggles of our forebears have left us with no other choice but to be resilient. It is this resilience that we have to now use to continue the fight. A fight that speaks to the reawakening, reclaiming, revamping, retention, and our re-education for our people, so that our stories can be told, made known, and be truly appreciated. Moreover, it is imperative that we educate this generation so that we can grow up knowing their roots, knowing our roots, feeling proud of our story so that they too can do their part in continuing the legacy. The onus, my people, is on us, all of us, to provide greater investments in the enhancement, safeguarding, and preservation of our Garifuna heritage. I re-echo the sentiment. It is imperative that together we do all within our power to preserve and conserve our assets. Assets that speak to our Garifuna descent. In Urumi, it is our duty to make all efforts to showcase and preserve our culture. In so doing, documentation should continue to be a key factor. We have to learn to tell our own story through books, videos, documentaries, pamphlets, training workshops at all levels, to include our children and by extension the youth, as well as the adults. Besides making the effort to write our own story, we must recognize, name, and conserve our heritage sites. A task that the National Parks, Rivers and Beaches Authority that falls within our ministry has become experts in. We have petroglyphs, we have our Châtelet National Park, there's the obelisk in Dorsetshire Hill, there's Baliso, yes, a force to be reckoned with. But it bears strong significance to this part of our story, our Garifuna story, and it ought to be centered in our discussions. In 2001, that's 2001, UNESCO proclaimed the language, dance, and music of the Garifuna as a masterpiece of the oral and intangible heritage of humanity in Nicaragua, Honduras, and Belize. This pronouncement is one of the best examples of the worth, the credence associated with the richness of our heritage. Therefore, it is our duty to safeguard our Garifuna language, our religious practices, including our music, the singing, the drumming, and the dance, our folklore, amidst other traditional practices, our clothing, our food, our boiling, our plantain, banana, our dukona, cassava bread, our bambam, I do love my bambam, madongo, and any and everything that truly emulates the spirits of our ancestors. In our quest to sustain our cultural capital, We should make education, yes, I reiterate, we should make education a component in teaching our cultural heritage, our traditional music, be it our songs, call and response song patterns, our drumologies, various syncopated drum patterns, our language, our dances, especially the punta, which now proudly forms one of our traditional dances in SVG. We have to hold to our Garifuna heritage and our traditions. Hold on, not in the sense of keeping it to ourselves, but hold on in terms of safeguarding it so that the future generation can carry on its legacy. It is the intent of the colonial strongholds for us to lose it all, but thanks to our forefathers, we were able to retain it, and now it is our duty, yes, it is our duty to ensure that it is passed on for the sake of continuity from generation to generation to generation. It is our duty, the duty is on us all to focus mainly on the preservation of what makes us uniquely Garifuna, the language, the songs, music, dances, and other related customs, our festivals, as we strengthen our local Garifuna communities, all in the red zone, to aid in the promoting and safeguarding, rather, of our Garifuna heritage. Let's revitalize, replay, recapture, orderings, reawaken, and what we should all be proud of. We should all be proud of our intangible cultural heritage, our story, our Garifuna story. All things considered, I take this opportunity to heartily congratulate the Garifuna Heritage Foundation on this, its 9th International Conference, Garifuna Conference. This conference continues to create partnerships by bringing key stakeholders in one space, so that together we can all reflect on successes that were born out of this synergy over the years. I wish the Garifuna Heritage Foundation and the University of the West Indies Open Campus all the best on this great initiative. Let's be proud of who we are. Let's tell our story. Yes, it's our story. Let's celebrate our rich Garifuna heritage, our lineage. Let's celebrate who we are.
Thank you very much, Sister Maxine, for those words on behalf of the Minister and, of course, on behalf of the Ministry, particularly the Department of Culture. It's now my pleasure to bring back my co-host, Brother Marlon, to particularly introduce our special guest speaker this evening. And, of course, later on, after the main presentation, we'll have a special presentation from the seismic unit of the University of the West Indies, based in the St. Augustine campus in Trinidad and Tobago. Brother Marlon, over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Ronnie. So let me first go through the bio of our featured speaker. Mr. Darius Avila was born in Punta Gara, Toledo District, Belize. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration from the University of Belize and an Executive Master's degree in Business Administration from the University of the West Indies. In 1998, after having been employed with the Belize Social Security Board for 14 years, he established Business Information Services and Systems, BIS, a business consultancy firm that specializes in corporate setups, organizational plans, and systems development, financial management and taxation, project management, and business training. This year marks Business Information Services and Systems' 23rd year in operations, and it continues to serve its clients across the country of Belize, as well as its clients located in various parts of the world, including the United States, Canada, and Europe. In 2005, along with his wife Lisa, he built and opened Villa Suites in Punta Gorda Town, Belize. After only 1 year in operation, Villa Suites won the prestigious Small Hotel of the Year award. This award is given each year by the Belize Tourism Board to one hotel in Belize for excellence in service and superior quality in accommodations. Despite his rigorous business commitments, Mr. Avila finds the time to give back to his community. In 2006, as part of his corporate social responsibility agenda, along with his mom, he conceptualized and established the Battle of the Drums initiative. This initiative promotes the annual Battle of the Drums competition and show, which brings thousands of people and tourism dollars to Punta Gorda Town. The greater objective of the initiative is to promote the retrieval and preservation of the Garifuna culture. In 2016, the internationally acclaimed Battle of the Drums competition and show won the major Festival of the Year award in the country of Belize. In 2009, he was instrumental in establishing the Toledo Association of Businesses, an entity that is committed to the enhancement, mentoring, preparation, motivation, and organization of the private sector in Toledo. Mr. Avila is the founding president of this association. Under his leadership, this association has pursued strategies that promote direct foreign investment as well as local business development and investment. Currently, he is also the chairman of the board of directors of Southern Environmental Association, a non-profit conservation organization headquartered in Placencia Village, Belize, that co-manages the Laughing Board Key National Park and Gladden Spit and Silk Key Marine Resort. Mr. Avila continues to be a part of the development process in Toledo and Belize. In recognition of his contribution to culture and economic development, he was awarded the Meritorious Service Award by the Prime Minister of Belize. He recognizes that his accomplishments are the result of divine intervention, self-motivation, hard work, and perseverance. His daily life is guided by 3 simple principles as follows. 1. It is in giving that one receives. 2. The African proverb, if many little people in many little places do many little things, you can change the face of the earth. And 3. Success comes through planning, hard work, and perseverance. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Mr. Darius Avila, our featured speaker for this year's 9th International Garifuna Conference. Mr. Darius Avila.
Thank you, Brother Marlon. Good night to all. Musutin alu gurirugo. Ona hatina mauga amage waduhe ya penige. Amage nanibo dirage faria lelanina larero garao. Tomage nukucho Olivia Palacio Avila. To either baliwa lu wadaro ne faria digi. Amage nibiru. O busereme. Amisora hanina. Lida ondo nile. Nafagwa alo na chawa rumuruso yano huma le chururube. Good evening. I bring you greetings from our folks of my hometown in Paine, Punta Gorda, Belize, as well as our members at the Battle of the Drum Secretariat, and from my soon-to-be 96-year-old mother, Mrs. Olivia Palacio Avila, the co-founder of the Battle of the Drums Garifuna Cultural Retrieval and Preservation Initiative, as well as from my other family members. Protocol has been established, but I would like to recognize and thank President David Williams, Ms. Cherise Brown, Mrs. Zoila Ellis Brown, the Garifuna Heritage Foundation, the University of the West Indies Open Campus of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and the organizing committee of this prestigious and important annual conference. I always wanted to attend this conference in person and planned to take the opportunity to make my first visit to our ancestral homeland of St. Vincent. I first planned in 2014 and was about to make that trip. But as fate would have it, my wife was diagnosed with cancer and our trip had to be aborted. Thereafter, in 2020, my earnest plans to visit got derailed as we had to grapple with an unexpected pandemic, which has lasted much too long and is still impacting all of us today. Nevertheless, as fate has delayed my trip so far, it is my sincere belief that fate will also see me realizing my plans. For that trip is a must-do, and God willing, I will certainly make it someday soon. And as originally planned, I will ensure that it coincides with my attendance at the annual International Garifuna Conference. I know that Ms. Zoila is hearing me in this regard. For now, I am very pleased and proud to be with you to present this address and participate in this conference. I recognize the theme of this conference, Building Resilience, Creating Cultural Capital for Sustainability of the Garifuna Heritage. It is a bold and powerful statement, and one that needs to be fully ventilated, and from which action plans and steps can be derived. Accordingly, in contribution to what I hope will be that eventuality, the title of my address today is Creating Sustainability, Building Resilience, Nurturing our Garifuna Culture and Heritage, the story of the Battle of the Drums, Garifuna Cultural Retrieval and Preservation Initiative. You will note that the title of my presentation and the theme present similar terms because they are both aligned. My presentation aims to share how, based on my own experience, particularly at the Battle of the Drums Garifuna Cultural Retrieval and Preservation Initiative, we have carved out and actualized a strategic direction that has allowed us to create sustainability, build resilience, and nurture our Garifuna culture and heritage. To start, we need to highlight the important terms to provide clarity of definition and determine applicability of context. Those terms include building resilience, creating sustainability, and creating cultural capital. These terms and related actions that can be derived therefrom are then contextualized in reference to the nurturing of our Garifuna culture and heritage. So let's examine these terms individually. Firstly, building resilience. Resilience is a term that is synonymous to the Garifuna people and culture. In a sense, we are the Jews of the New World in the context of surviving the genocide that was meted out to our ancestors by the British in 1796 and 97. As one of my uncles used to say, God is a Garifuna. We are his chosen people. Had our people not been resilient, our ancestors would not have survived the First Carib War during the period 1772 and 1773. Likewise, after the death of our beloved paramount chief, Joseph Chatelier, on March 14, 1795, we would not have been able to endure and survive another 15 months of fighting under the capable leadership of Chief Chatelier's brother, Duvalier. And clearly, we would not have been able to survive the onslaught that was being brought to bear on the women, children, and men subsequent to our surrender that brought the so-called Second Carib War to an end in June of 1796. Worse, had our people not been resilient, we would not have survived the hideous treatment on Balisol for 9 agonizing months and exiled to Rotan, Honduras, a place many, many, many miles from our native homeland, and in which there is hardly any arable land. Coincidentally, today is Exile Day, that fateful day of gross proportions, when our ancestors were forcibly removed from Balisol. Please, let's give a moment of silence in commemoration of the struggles and those who perished on that day, as well as before and thereafter. Continuing on my discussions on resilience, coming into the 19th and 20th and 21st century, were we not resilient, we would not have been able to survive political persecution and repression in Honduras and institutionalized victimization and discrimination in Guatemala and Belize. But there has always been that Garifuna resolve, that bold determination, that ability to overcome adversities that we can term resilience. However, for the purposes of my presentation tonight, I will discuss resilience within the context of cultural resilience. Social researcher Tamara Thiel defines cultural resilience as the capability of a cultural system consisting of structure of cultural processes in relevant communities to observe adversity, deal with change, and continue to develop. Folk et al. Defines resilience as the capability of a system to process or observe disturbance. Recent conceptions of resilience de-emphasize the notion of bouncing back to a previous state and place more emphasis on processes of bouncing forward, involving absorption, learning adaptation, and transformation, than on seeking specific outcomes that will maintain the previous status quo. This is important because typically when we think about resilience, we think about keeping a particular status quo, or if we have moved from that status quo, bouncing back. Common conceptions are telling us resilience is about adjusting, is about adapting, is about learning, is about transforming. Therefore, when we speak about resilience, and particularly cultural resilience, we are not necessarily referring to keeping the status quo, but rather to adjusting to manage the impacts of new realities, while not allowing a complete dilution of the original, or the status quo, as we call it. Therefore, we can seek to promote our culture, exhibit our dances, our food, our clothing, our drumming, and interact with other cultures, all the while maintaining the essence of what it means to be Garifuna. In my own words, cultural resilience is the ability to remain relevant and noteworthy. The other term, creating sustainability. In Willis Jenkins' theory of sustainability, he refers to sustainability as a capacity to maintain some entity, outcome, or process over time. And then there is the concept of cultural sustainability. As per Wikipedia, taken apart, culture is defined as a set of beliefs, morals, methods, institutions, and a collection of human knowledge that is dependent on the transmission of these characteristics to younger generations. And sustainability is defined as the ability to sustain and continue. Therefore, cultural sustainability has to do with maintaining cultural beliefs, cultural practices, heritage conservation, culture as its own entity, and the question of whether or not any given cultures will exist in the future. We know that our Garifuna culture has withstood this test of time and will certainly continue to exist in the future. The other term, creating cultural capital, a term introduced by Pierre Bourdieu to refer to the symbols, tastes, ideas, and preferences that can be strategically used as resources in social action. Used in a broader sense, cultural capital refers to having assets that give us social mobility. Those assets are both tangible and intangible and falls into three categories: institutionalized, meaning education or specialized knowledge; embodied, meaning personalities, skills, and so forth; and objectified, meaning clothing and other belongings. So why is this important? Because it gives us power. It helps us to achieve, it helps us to become successful and rise up without necessarily having wealth or financial capital. Having defined the terms of the theme of this conference and the title of my presentation, let us delve into why we have to build resilience, create sustainability, and cultural capital to nurture our cultural heritage. As per sociologist G. Bocardi, cultural heritage, whether tangible or intangible, is only sustainable to the extent that it has the capability to adapt to change through creative transformation, meaning that it is resilient and continues to develop. And as per Professor Rohit Jihatsu, conservation architect, and Bokova, Director General of UNESCO, cultural heritage is to be taken very seriously because it ensures cultural resilience and contributes to sustainability, both now and in the future. So how do we build resilience, create sustainability, and cultural capital to nurture our cultural heritage? Whether the intention or action emanates from an individual unit, a corporate entity, or a community, there are varying strategies and action steps that can be employed. But importantly, we need to be mindful of our environment in which we exist, in which we operate, and recognize the variables, particularly those that can adversely impact on our efforts. We are social beings, living in social and cultural structures that are impacted by legal, economic, political, and religious factors, among others. The variables that can adversely impact on our individual and our collective effort and strategic direction include, among others, migration, intermarriages with other cultures, influences of other cultures, dilution of family units, lack of a structured approach, lack of smart goals as we approach our work, and of course, demographics. The tastes, choices, preferences of people, particularly millennials and those of the Gen Z era, who make up over 60% of our global population. Yes, those are part of our environment, and we need to be mindful. And how do we put mechanisms that can mitigate the adverse effects of our external environment? Once we are aware of what those adverse potentially adverse effects are. From the perspective of building resilience, some approaches can include sheltering our organizational assets, meaning separating personal liability from organizational liability, developing and pursuing well-planned and structured programs, integrating continuity and succession planning into our operations, obtaining external validation, integrating children, youth, and others, and make them beneficiaries of our programs. From the perspective of creating sustainability, some approaches include acting local but thinking global. Do not be dependent on one source of income. Apply the 80-20 rule, where not more than 20% of our income is coming from a single source, and the other 80% is coming from multiple sources. Integrate the concept of building passive income into your operations. In other words, earning while you sleep. Seek to maximize income generation from the orange economy. As per UNESCO, the orange economy are those sectors of the economy whose main purpose is the production or reproduction, promotion, dissemination, and or marketing of goods, services, and activities that have cultural, artistic, or patrimonial content. Our impressive Garifuna culture is naturally poised to be an active participant and beneficiary of the orange economy. Likewise, a part of creating sustainability is building a sustainability culture in whatever you do. And now, as it relates to the perspective of creating cultural capital, it includes the following. If it's worth doing, do it right. Create value. Build in others the insatiable appetite for your services and products, and of course for your culture. Establish and protect your brand and intellectual property. Identify your market and be aware of your tastes, of the tastes, preferences, and choices of your target audience. Craft your messages and messaging strategy to appeal to your target audience. And now I want to speak to what we do at the Battle of the Drums and how we have been able to incorporate those concepts in our Battle of the Drums Garifuna Cultural Retrieval and Preservation Initiative. In effect, that initiative is one that nurtures our Garifuna culture and heritage. And over the 16 years of our operations, we have managed to integrate those concepts, principles, and practices that I just discussed into our operations. A few examples are as follows. Resilience. Our Garifuna Cultural Retrieval and Preservation Initiative is pursued in a structured way under three main strategic objectives. Mainly, Garifuna Language Retrieval Strategic Objective, Garifuna Drumming, Singing, Dance Strategic Objective, and our Garifuna Community Support Strategic Objective. Under each objective, there are different programs that involve children, youth, and adults. Likewise, we build continuity and succession planning into our initiative by establishing and maintaining a Battle of the Drums youth arm. This youth arm understudies the current leaders with a view to eventually taking over. We know that that is imminent. In terms of being respectful and responsive to our legal environment, our organization is incorporated as a not-for-profit entity. And to solidify our legal status, our organization will shortly become registered as a non-governmental organization in Belize. Also, because a large part of our audience is in the United States, and there are significant opportunities that we have pursued and can continue to pursue. We acquired very recently and were incorporated in the US as a not-for-profit entity, referred to as a 501c3 organization. That designation will allow us to enter the US market in a more significant way, to generate revenue from our activities from out of the US, but more so, to also infuse our cultural retrieval and preservation initiative into our Garifuna communities in various cities across the US. From the above, you will note that our approach builds resilience not only in our culture, but also for our organization and our programs as we pursue them. In talking about sustainability, one salient factor that we considered at the inception of our Battle of the Drums initiative was financial self-sustainability. We recognized that from the onset, for the initiative to thrive, we had to generate revenues from various income streams. That process gave birth to the annual Battle of the Drums competition and show, which was our first income stream and has been our steadfast income stream over the past 16 years. Talking about being less dependent on one source of income, we integrated into our efforts other self-generated income streams, such as the annual Garifuna Music Festival and the Garifuna Song Competition. And as a not-for-profit entity, we have also pursued and acquired donor funding. In terms of self-generating income streams, of recent, we have established an online store on our website platform at www.battleofthedrums.bz. This has enabled us to generate income from non-traditional sources and from a wider market, while not having to get bogged down with the intricacies of some aspects of business management. Currently, we are also pursuing the monetization of our website, as well as our social media platforms. So far, we have been successful in monetizing our YouTube channel, and we are almost at the point where our Facebook social media account will allow for monetization. What does this mean? It is tied to the concept of earning while you sleep. And that is the thought process behind the monetization of our social media accounts. In terms of the concept of act local and think global, clearly our online store initiative is one in that regard. But likewise, our annual fundraiser, the Battle of the Drums competition and show, as it is being live streamed on our social media platforms, we have been able to take the show to a global audience and receive significant interaction and support. Last year, our reach was over 131,000 views across 45 countries. This reach has magnified interest in what we do. Through this reach, we are not only able to generate funds, but likewise we are able to pursue our Garifuna Cultural Retrieval and Preservation Initiative, talking about supporting our Garifuna heritage. Also, while we act local in terms of our Garifuna cultural retrieval efforts, we think global in terms of some of our programs. One such was the rolling out of our annual summer camp to the world stage by making it available entirely online for the first time in 2021. This allowed us to reach participants from across Belize as well as from other countries around the world. I note that we initially had interest from St. Vincent, but for whatever reason, it was not actualized. We will pursue that initiative again this year, and it is my hope that we will reach out to our partners on St. Vincent so that we can get some participants and spread our cultural retrieval via our summer camp. So our sister nation, our ancestral homeland of St. Vincent. Finally, in terms of sustainability, it is important that it transcends the entire organization. In that regard, it is equally important to build and promote a sustainability culture, as I mentioned earlier. A sustainability culture exists if people share a belief in the importance of sustainability and behave in ways that support it. That is a culture that we share and we actively promote in our Battle of the Drums organization. Creating cultural capital. As discussed before, cultural capital refers to having assets, tangible and intangible, that gives social mobility. These assets can be institutionalized, embodied, or objectified. By its mere makeup, our Garifuna culture has tangible and intangible assets that translate into significant cultural capital. An additional intangible asset, as other speakers have alluded to, is UNESCO's proclamation of May 18, 2001, where the Garifuna language, dance, and music was awarded the title of Masterpiece of the Oral and Intangible Heritage of Humanity. This is a huge asset that we are yet to fully exploit to derive tangible benefits for our culture. However, in terms of our own activities, we can pursue several initiatives and programs that build on the cultural capital that we already have. But having secured the cultural capital, it is important to protect those assets so that as the inventor or initiator, we can derive maximum benefits from our initiatives and from our culture. In that regard, the concept of protecting your intellectual property comes to bear. At the Battle of the Drums, we have pursued such protection, both in Belize and in the United States, in the form of registering copyrights and trademarks, so that ultimately our organization and culture will be the true beneficiaries of the work we have so tirelessly pursued. In conclusion, you will note that this presentation started by providing an academic view to contextualize the concepts of sustainability, resilience, and capital culture. Having understood the context, I provided practical examples and ideas as to how academic can be actualized and transformed into the real. The main takeaways are as follows. Whatever initiatives you undertake in nurturing our Garifuna heritage to create sustainability, build resilience, and develop cultural capital. To be successful, you need to be deliberate and structured in your approach. Be mindful of your external environment. Put in place resources and mechanisms that will allow you to meet your goals and objectives over time. Protect your assets and create and maintain value to generate continuous interest in and validation and support for your initiative. I trust that I have shared enough to provide the realization that our efforts at the Battle of the Drums Garifuna Cultural Retrieval and Preservation Initiative out of Peine, Punta Gorda, Belize, can be replicated in other places and spaces to derive those outcomes that will build resilience and create cultural capital for the sustainability of our Garifuna heritage. We owe it to our culture. We owe it to our heritage. We owe it to our ancestors. And we owe it to ourselves. So that And in the end, we will ensure that we are on the right side of history when that history is told. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity. Sereme, Bungiwama, God be with us all. I wish this conference continued success now and in the future. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Brother Avila, for a very comprehensive presentation. I really enjoyed your presentation, and I'm here sitting and wondering whether or not you have been listening into some of the conversations in various quarters of the University of the West Indies, because at the highest level, these are some of the conversations we are having about monetizing the creations, the hard work of our people across this Caribbean that we love. And so it's quite interesting. So I look forward to some of the discussions tomorrow on some of the other NGOs will share their own story. So thank you very much. I was trying to take a peep on the website, and then you caught me off guard there. But Brother Darius, thank you very much. I'm sure we'll have opportunities to engage you further on what's happening in particularly in Toledo, Punta Garden. Thank you very much. Blessings.
Thank you. Thank you. Good night.
I now wish to invite Brother Marlon. Sister Zola, do we have a song before Brother Marlon comes back in?
Yes, we do.
Okay, please go ahead. We'll share a song with you, sisters and brothers, at this time. Thank you very much. That one was quite lovely. It had me rocking. Thanks to our brother from Honduras, Aurelio Martinez. Thank you very much. And I want to share Dr. Scott's complaint that I haven't heard Punta Rock for the night. So please, I hope when we commence tomorrow that we will have some Punta Rock. All right. It's my pleasure now to invite my co-host, Brother Marlon, to bring a vote of thanks. And after that, I'll invite Sister Zola to give us any housekeeping matters before we close this evening's session. Oh, sorry, we do have a special presentation. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead of myself. So before I invite Brother Marlon and Sister Zola, it's my pleasure now to invite Sister Monique Johnson from the Seismic Unit to share a special presentation with us. Sister Monique?
Hey, good evening, everyone. And thank you very much for offering me this space this evening to share with you a little bit about the work that we've been doing at the Seismic Research Center in terms of the recovery from the eruption, the last eruption last year. And I'm just going to take about 15 minutes to share with you the project it's called the Changing Landscapes project, which is part of, it's a sub-project as part of the umbrella Risk at Margins project. And it's really targeting communities in the red zone. And I'm going to share with you a short video, which basically introduces you to the project. It's more or less still in its development stages, but I really wanted to take this opportunity to share the work of these persons that we've engaged with in the communities that have really done some incredible work. So I hope you will enjoy the next few minutes, and I hope it all works.
The way forward in terms of reducing the impact of hazards and disasters in areas like St. Vincent fundamentally resides with the people who are going to be affected first. The people, when something happens in these places, people will feel it first, the people in the community. And traditionally, the approach to responding to hazards, is all still good. That is focused on making plans and putting structures in place and things like that, right? So that's the people from somewhere else, at a regional level, local level, decide on these things. And often the community, the people who are going to be the first people to respond, are usually the end of the process. I think that's the change.
Changing Landscapes is a collaborative recovery project in St. Vincent being executed by UE Seismic, the University of East Anglia in the UK, and the North Windward communities, or the communities over the river in the Red Volcanic Hazard Zone, so from Orange Hill north to Fancy. And the aim is to get persons from these communities observing and documenting changes in their environment, particularly when lahars occur, and we're doing this through a citizen science approach. And the general understanding is that local communities have a very specific knowledge around what is actually happening on the ground. So what we want to do is put the tools and the technology for capturing data directly into the hands of the community and encourage them to document, reflect upon, and communicate the changes they experience. So we're doing this through photography and simple low-cost tech sensors for measuring rainfall in the mountains. And we started with a series of workshops in October 2021. just to introduce the group to the basics of photography and developing their visual storytelling language. And these were facilitated by a group of local photographers and mentors. We also had a psychologist on the team, and finally the scientists from the SRC and the UEA came and engaged with the group. So rather than going head first with science or tech, we chose to first understand people and put how they live with an experienced risk front and center, and then bring in the science. So in this way, we want to create better and more relevant science.
So initially, I was told about this by Stefan, and of course I was interested because I do love photography, and I also love taking nature shots, documenting our environment in the red zone, all of the people that were going to be presented, and for the fact that these people are really good photographers, definitely I'm just like, okay, this is going to be an amazing program. I'm about to learn so much, and I can't wait to participate in it. And then we dived into the whole program now, and it was just like, wow.
What we would really like to see is the generation of two intersecting sources of knowledge. So one being the stories and the narratives and experiences of persons in the community in the red zone that continue to be impacted. And the other would be this measured empirical data of rainfall that could be reconciled with these stories. So at the intersection of these two processes, we want to build relationships and create pathways for knowledge and opening conversations. So at the very least, we hope to acknowledge what communities are actually experiencing, their perceptions, and an opportunity to really tell their stories through their own experiences.
We have called this project Changing Landscapes, because this is a changing landscape, a constantly changing landscape. And we want to support the communities to understand and respond to that changing landscape.
So then we went straight into the field and we did a series of community walks which had multiple purposes and advantages. The underlying objective was for the group to identify suitable locations for siting the rain gauges, the buckets, for collecting the rainfall data. So we basically traversed most of the ridges and rivers radiating from the windward side of the volcano down into each community. And I think this was a really enriching experience, well, for me and for everyone, in observing, sharing, and learning about different experiences for each community. And this sharing took place between scientists and the participants, and the participants and the scientists, and as well as among the community persons. So, for example, persons from Orange will learn something new about different connections and experiences in Fancy and Oria and vice versa.
So we're currently up inside Oria River, going across the catchment area to see the damage that the Lahars have done due to the eruptions.
Yeah, we up in Oria where there was great sway, as you can see. But it's all watchable right now. Yeah, just there's going on right now.
Getting people in the community to be able to understand how the environment operates, and how therefore they could make sure that they're not so negatively affected by this environment. So when you're done with science, that we're kind of talking about really making the community more aware of the environment so that they can make observations that's useful in their own interest as well as us who might be studying the science.
Let me see what
So in this way, the project really became more than just about collecting data for science, but we really tried to open up those avenues for sharing that community knowledge and changes, not just in the physical, but also in the social landscape and their experiences during and after the eruption. So we really tried to get this new set of questions emerging of the whole decision-making process and the influences on risk for these communities.
Making a trek up the mountain. We're going to put in a rain gauge to help these folks and for help us see what's happening in the rainfall. Of course, the rain has giving us a little bit of blessing this morning. Hopefully it will stop, not keep coming. Allow us to do what we have to do.
At the end of the day, science doesn't answer all of the questions. Scientists don't know all the answers. So the real innovation in this project was less in the science and technology and more in the approach of engaging with the group through the project towards the equalizing of knowledge and using technology to support that.
So what we're doing here is setting up a rain gauge, which we're going to put in the catchment here in Oria. And what we want to do with this rain gauge is understand how much rainfall occurs up in the catchment here, because the hazards that impact people down on the coast are lahars or flash floods when the river comes down and brings lots of sediment brings lots of sediment down with it. Okay, so trying to understand the rainfall up here, we want to engage with people who live on the coast and are affected. And these guys have been part of our project and learned a little bit about their environment and showed us and shared with us their environment. We've learned from them. And they're going to work with us to come up here and retrieve the data from the rain gauge. So we're just going through a process of making sure everybody knows how to get the data off so that they can come up and do that.
From fancy to watery and up to autumn, the people watching and wondering whenever. Some with knapsack on their backs, others with cameras in their hand, spying and snapping all over the people. Up to Ivy Spring we climb, even the corner trail and petrify the line, searching for information to equip the mind, to tell the story of the Red Zone and feeling proud to say this are the goal. Participants came from different communities, led by a hard-working seismic team. We change the landscape so them see, telling stories in photography. So now we have the tooling we have. Let us promote this part of New Zealand. Don't wait till another eruption. Thank you.
Right, well, so we are currently at Jacob's Well. That is about, I guess, it's a massive lava flow from one of the prehistoric eruptions from Soufrière. And it's a nice resting spot at the last rest stop before you probably start the last climb up to the volcano.
So I hope you enjoyed that little preview. It's a work in progress, and it kind of brings us to where we are right now in terms of the project. When I was last in St. Vincent at the beginning of February, up to that point, we were successfully able to install 5 of these community rain gauges, which the communities have really taken ownership of, and the last system that we put in Overland at that time, it was a reminder that we're implementing this project within the pandemic, and most of the science team had left, and I actually contracted the virus, and I had to hand everything over to the community, and they actually did that last installation entirely on their own, which was quite phenomenal, and it really showed the ownership and the interest. And we look forward to really sustaining this with the community and seeing how they incorporate this data and how they interpret it and how we can really reconcile it with their experiences. And the next step is really to provide them with a platform to share the knowledge that they have generated over the last few months. And the plan is to host an exhibition which we are hoping to launch on the 8th of April, which would coincide with the anniversary of the eruption last year. And this is meant to be a community exhibit, and it will be held in Sandy Bay in the community in a space that you can see in the picture above in this slide. And we are really hoping to share this work with persons throughout St. Vincent, and particularly when we were doing the workshops, it was very important for them to vocalize and share who they wanted to have as an audience. And the first thing that came to the fore was persons from the green zone. So in reimagining the red zone, which would likely be the title of the exhibition, we have decided to do a launch in Kingstown, just to try and bring the information to the green persons in the green zone, which is the audience that they really want to target, the community, and we encourage persons to come out to Sandy Bay and share in this experience with this amazing group and the work that they have done. So that's all for me for now. Thank you very much for staying with me at this hour and for the opportunity to share this work. And I wish you all a great success over the next 2 days with a lot of enriching discussion on this fantastic conference and subject that you have brought. Thank you very much to everyone, and have a good weekend.
Thank you very much, Monique, and your team at the Seismic Unit. This is really refreshing. I really hope I'm not stepping out of my bounds, but would there be any public announcement about this, a PSA advertisement, because that might be needed so that we get maximum participation. This is very important.
Thank you very much for that. Absolutely, and this is why I really wanted to share with you all, so that we can really just to encourage the sharing of the information and to highlight this event. So we can get persons coming out and visiting these areas and participating in the activities and experiencing this part of the volcano and the geoheritage and all that's been created. So yeah, so thank you very much, and I look forward to communicating more with everyone about this work.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it, and give our regards to the team at the Seismic Unit. Thank you very much. We look forward to the exhibitions and the engagement. Thank you. All right. So my sisters and brothers, I now take this opportunity to invite my co-host to take it from here. Brother Marlon.
Thank you, Ronnie. Just before I go into the vote of thanks, I just want to put Monique's presentation into context for us. Let me tell you who she is. Now, Monique Johnson is an armed scientist with exploration in geological and coastal risk, hazards management, and public engagement. She supports the UV Seismic Research Center through project management and is currently implementing a recovery project with North Windward communities through a citizen science and participatory storytelling. Her passion is in risk reduction that incorporates public engagement to strengthen relevance, accountability, and to build trust among stakeholders. Now, Monique, throughout her presentation, she mentioned the red zone communities. Just for your information, these red zone communities consist of communities that are located closest to the Las Sofre volcano. And incidentally, they are indigenous communities. And these indigenous communities in the red zone were disproportionately affected by the eruption of the Las Sofre volcano. In fact, many of them are still in shelters across St. Vincent and the Grenadines today. They remain displaced. So I think it was important for us to get that kind of context, and the participants that you saw in the video are all from the indigenous communities in the red zone. So I just wanted to give that context to the presentation. And in fact, the 9th of 9th of April will mark 1 year since the Lasso volcano erupted violently here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. On the 9th of April 2021, we had the violent eruption of the Lasso volcano eruption, with eruptions that continued for about maybe a month. We had about 5 major eruptions over the period of a month. So it's important for us to remember this and also to understand that the Garifuna community, the indigenous communities, inclusive of Garifuna communities, were severely affected by this eruption. So now I'll go into the vote of thanks. Let me first start by thanking the main collaborator of this conference, the University of the West Indies Open Campus, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Thank you for your usual committed work in working along with the Garifuna Heritage Foundation to deliver this conference. Special thanks to Ms. Maxine Brown, Cultural Officer in the Ministry of Tourism and Culture. Thanks to Ms. Rosita Alvarez, who gave us the prayer. Of course, our sponsors, National Properties, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Bank of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Memorial Mutual, as well our 3 corporate partners. Thank you so much. I look forward to your continued support. And the keynote address, I agree with Danny that he described it. Ronnie described it as a comprehensive presentation, and I agree with him, and it was also pragmatic and certainly a lot of takeaways for us to really consider. The media, Mr. Jeffrey Balcom was responsible for ensuring that we broadcast on YouTube live this evening, so thank you, Mr. Jeffrey Balcom. Of course, our host, my co-host, Mr. Ronnie Daniel, thank you for doing a wonderful job as usual. And I want to thank Miss Vanessa Immersion, who was working hard online behind the scenes to ensure that the technical setup and everything was really spot on. So thank you, Vanessa. Thanks also to Mrs. Zoila Ellis Brown, who is always working tirelessly to ensure that the work of the Garifuna Heritage Foundation is done. And also, as well, speaking of the Garifuna Heritage Foundation, the president, Mr. David Darkey Williams, thank you so much for your continued hard work. Thank you for your presentation tonight as well. All who presented earlier in the shout-out segment, thank you so much. We really appreciate you participating and making the first night of the 9th International Garifuna Conference a success. It has really whet our appetite for what is to come over the next two nights, and I'm excited to see what those 2 nights will hold. So thank you so much for joining us and remaining with us for time well spent. See you tomorrow from 5 p.m. Eastern Caribbean time.
Okay, Brother Marlon, and thank you very much for being such a gracious host earlier. And I hope that we can continue this collaboration. Let me now invite Sister Zola, just before you go, for any housekeeping matters for tomorrow and Sunday. Zola.
Yes. Thank you, Ronnie. Thanks for your collaboration. We start tomorrow at 5, as Marlon said, and 5 St. Vincent time, that's 3 o'clock Belize time, Guatemala time, and elsewhere you just figure out what you need to do. But I think that for the most part, those like housekeeping is minimal. We are virtual. We continue to be virtual, and hopefully we will have a wonderful we have lined up a wonderful series of presentations for tomorrow and for Sunday. And we look forward to seeing all of you present and others as well. Good night.
Yeah, thank you, Sister Zola. Brothers and sisters, blessings to you and your loved ones. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. It has been a fantastic evening. Thank you very much. Brother Marlon, blessings.